Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Declan McConville, who is one of the contributors to the Axon website. Welcome to the podcast, Declan.
Hello, happy St Patrick's Day.
And happy St Patrick's Day to you, sir. Earlier on this week, we took a visit to Cathkin Park, Declan. I think you'd been down there a couple of times already. And you also had a look around the Jimmy Johnstone Pavilion. The Academy and Charitable Trust are based at the Pavilion. What's your thoughts on that historical place down there?
I think it's something that's good to be kept. You know, Ferdinand have obviously got a big place in Scottish football history. In their day, they're a big club. It's a football stadium in Glasgow that's obviously left for a long time, but the work that Jim and the guys are doing down here with the Jimmy Johnstone Charitable Trust is excellent, and it's continuing to be man's legacy, and hopefully going to bring through a new generation of footballers.
Well, I think the Academy has consistently brought through talent, and that talent has gone all over the country and further afield. They've produced players who have gone to Celtic and Darnell Fisher, and they've also produced players who have gone up to Ibrox, and that will continue because obviously the foundations are there. You mentioned Jimmy Johnstone, Declan, before your time, but you do a lot of historical research to write articles for A Celtic State of Mind. What's your thoughts on wee Jinky?
You know, I've got these wee figures in front of me, and Jimmy was one of the guys I kind of looked at, ginger hair, and thought, oh, who's this character? And growing up like a lot of folk, I actually saw it in a tweet the other day, when crossing the road, it was always wait for wee Jinky. So that's probably my first memory of Jimmy Johnstone. And then I kind of remember I was 6 when he passed away, and just there been this big, massive outpouring of emotion from people, and getting taken to Celtic Park with my dad, like to put a scarf or whatever down, I can't really remember. But yeah, you know, and getting to know the club, etc. Jimmy's a pivotal part of Celtic, and you ever talk to a Lioner, they've always got a story about the wee man, and that love for Jimmy extends beyond Celtic. You know, Willie Henderson's a really great guy, and it's just that, you know, it was his pal, and I think that sums up Jimmy. You mentioned wee figures that you had in front of you. You've brought along some of your own memorabilia that you've picked up down the years. Talk us through these figures. These were obviously after my childhood. I wasn't involved in picking these up. What are they? So obviously growing up in the early 2000s, we had a strong Celtic team. Even though I was born the day that Super Cali went ballistic at Celtic Park.
You were born that day?
I was born that day. My dad didn't go to the game because
Wee Deck was on his way.
Wee Deck was on his way, so he missed that, thankfully. But boy, it was a blessing in disguise, and obviously Martin then came, Kenny won the League Cup and went on to do the treble, so you can take it what you want. But yeah, these figures are how I get to know Celtic players. When I was a wee guy growing up, I've got Henrik here in front of me, and I remember the 40th anniversary of the Lions. They brought out this big massive kind of box.
Who done them, Declan? Was it the club or?
Yeah, you could just buy them in the club. Try to have a wee look here. Corinthian PLC, whoever that is. But yeah, so that's how you used to, you know, buy your heroes, Nakamura, Alan Thompson, whoever. And there was this big Lions box set, and that's how we got to know the Lions.
And did you then have to recite the lineup, Simpson, Craig, Gemmell?
Yeah, that's how I learned it for these wee guys, and I've still got all the figures. So, and it's how maybe like guys like Billy McNeil and Jimmy Johnstone, etc., Bertie, that start to get to know these guys and think me a wee guy more about them. And then eventually, through your support of Celtic and through your media endeavours, you've met some of these guys. What's your experiences in meeting the likes of Bertie and Jim Craig? I've had the pleasure of meeting 10 of them of that 16 squad, and they're just the most humble, loveliest guys you could ever meet. You know, Jim is a fantastic ambassador for Celtic. I was really, really glad when he got appointed club ambassador last year. I got to meet Billy as well before his illness, and he was just such a lovely guy, and that goes for everybody in that squad, you know. And even guys like John Fallon, who is a regular at Celtic Park every week, I get the pleasure of sitting with him at away games, with him and Monica, and it's just brilliant. You know, his stories, his love of Celtic it's remarkable, and to still have these guys about growing up and getting to meet them, getting to know their stories, being able to celebrate a couple of years ago with them in the 50th anniversary was just amazing. You've brought some other items that you've picked up down the ages, Declan. You want to talk us through these as well? It's just jerseys. You know, I think there's been a few crackers, by Nike especially. New Balance I wasn't too keen, but I really liked that 40th anniversary Lisbon Lions commemoration kit. I remember the badge, big gold badge, and I used to look at it and think, oh, what is this all about? And obviously getting to know, but I really liked the kits in the 125 season. I think the three of them were absolute belters. The home kit was nice. I just liked the badge with the big commemorative crest. The black away kit was brilliant. Still get memories of that cup final that year and Joe Ledley scoring and putting his hands up, and we beat Hibs that day. And the third kit as well was just really, really nice. I just thought that was a brilliant season.
On the subject of jerseys then, Celtic have recently signed a deal with Adidas. I think that's got a lot of Celtic shirt aficionados quite excited to see what Adidas come up with. The shirts you've mentioned were Nike. What was your thoughts on the New Balance kits?
They were okay. A few of them, I was a bit disappointed. The 50th anniversary Alliance, badge-wise, it wasn't so, and it was just kind of, I just didn't think they were great quality, but I'm looking forward to Adidas, and I think from the old story back in the day, I think nearly Morecambe would have been quite chuffed that he wouldn't need to get the paint back out because Adidas had now came to Celtic Park rather than the other way around.
I think Adidas, having done the research on the Celtic jerseys, that was the one kit manufacturer that I would have loved to have seen working on the hoops, working on the Celtic kits, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with. I think it's a shame that the crests no longer seem to be embroidered as a general rule, and we've also lost the full colour crest that goes to a two-tone version as well a lot of the time, which is unfortunate. In my view, I'm more of an old school Celtic fan than yourself, Declan, being born yourself on the day that Inverness knocked us out. So we've had a wee chat about the Celtic historical element in your introduction. Obviously you were taken along by your old man, who I've met on a number of occasions as well. Comes to a lot of the Celtic events. And what's your early memories of coming to Celtic Park? How's that changed over the years?
I've always went to Celtic games with my dad, and until he's no longer here, I probably will always go to Celtic games with my dad. We've sat in the same seat. My dad got his season ticket when Fergus came, and he sat in the same seat since day one. It's just that the curve where the North Stand meets the Johnstone stand, where you'll see when Brackback scores that goal as a cut-off.
Yep.
So we've always sat there, and that's always been my memories of going to the game. My dad, his big pal James McDermott as well, going to games, and I found out the other day my first game was in 2003. The reason I found that out was it was the last game the supporters bus my dad was on previous to the one we're with now, still run from the same pub. It was the last time it ran from the pub, so I did get to see Larson, which I was a bit kind of unsure about, but I did get to see Larson.
So you saw him in the flesh?
I did see him in the flesh, yep, in
now,
his prime.
In his prime, yes. On that subject, and you've mentioned a couple of Celtic players from the past, I'm always interested to know Celtic fans' greatest ever 11. Obviously Jinky's been named the greatest ever Celt. Who am I to argue with that? But I never saw the great man playing, and it's always interesting to know what each individual's greatest 11 is and why. Kevin Graham picked his 11, and some of them were probably deemed to be cult players, Declan, but there was a reason behind every selection. So let's talk about your own favourite Celtic 11, starting with the goalkeeper.
I went with Fraser Foster. He's a guy that I really liked Arthur Boric, but I probably saw the tail end of him at Celtic, kind of remembering players. And Big Foster, the Barcelona performances this season, and Rome, etc. He's a big player when he wants to be a big player and keeps you in games. I just think some of his goalkeeping displays have been magnificent, and I really, really hope that we keep a hold of him. But he's probably the guy that I've watched for a long time, and I just think he's an incredible goalkeeper. And on this podcast we always give a big shout out to Stevie Woods, because we believe that he's played a massive part in the careers at Celtic Park of the likes of Boric and Craig Gordon and also Fraser Foster. So the big man Legrand Murala is in goals. And how are you setting up the defence? I've went with Jackie McNamara and Kieran Tierney as my fullbacks. Jackie, I remember as a wee guy the song, his name is McNamara, he's a Celtic boys right back, and that's why I went with Jackie. He was a guy that kind of, like these wee players, I think I've got a wee Jackie McNamara as well, and he was a guy that I would have watched and kind of remember him as captain of the club as well, so I went with Jackie. And I think in the left back position we probably missed him this season. I wasn't too chuffed when he left, I was a bit disappointed like I think everybody else, but I went with Kieran Tierney because I think he's an exceptional talent, and in his time at the club he was a big game player, so I went with KT. Foster, McNamara, Tierney. Who plays at centre half? Virgil van Dijk, Rolls Royce defender. I think anybody that watched him in his time at Celtic Park would agree with that. He was just a different class, and he's a player that I still maybe look out for the match of the day. I don't like Liverpool, but he's an exception. He's outstanding. What's your beef with Liverpool? I like Man United. I just don't like Liverpool. I know everybody will say Kenny Dalglish, etc., but yeah, I like the Celtic Man United connection. Paddy Crerand, Roy Keane, Brian McClare. I'm just looking for the sound effect for that one. Liverpool, come on. So, Big Virgil, he could play with anybody. Who would you line him up alongside? Because I've not played him at right back, I've went to Mikael Lustig beside Virgil. Celtic defenders, for me, centre halves especially growing up, were always a bit of a bomb scare. nice guys, Daniel Mastonovich, Jos Højveld, etc. Kelvin
Effie.
Wilson, Big Effie. But I think Mikael Lustig, you know, everybody was a bit disappointed there the way he parted, but he was a big player, and really, really good memories of Mikael. Probably my favourite being at Ibrox in the 5-1 game, when I was going mad and the Broomling going pass, and then he just seemed to become a different player, dance around a few players and put it into the net. And that day was just one of the best days supporting Celtic, to score 5 goals at Ibrox. But I'm going to play Big Lustig beside Virgil.
Do you think we utilise them enough at centre half, Declan?
No, maybe not in big games, because I thought Adam Matthews was a decent right back at the time, and you could kind of switch. I know Adam played a lot at left back when maybe Izzy was out, but I think the three of them as full backs could have maybe rotated a wee bit more and brought Mikael into the middle.
Looks like a solid back line you've got there, Declan. Let's move into the midfield.
I've went with kind of 2 controllers, and our current captain and manager, Scott Brown and Neil Lennon. Bruni is probably grown up, for anybody my age at 20, is the guy that we've all kind of loved, we've watched for so long, and he is probably the legend of our generation. Like guys maybe yourself, Paul McStay, others would be Scott Brown. You know, he's been a fantastic captain for Celtic. He has been the captain through one of the greatest spells since probably Billy was captain. I would say Celtic's second greatest ever captain after Billy McNeil. And he's just, you know, he's still got an engine in him. He's still a big player in the team.
How long can he keep this up? What age is he now? He's coming up for 35 in June.
I think so, yeah.
And he's got over 550 games under his belt. He's in the 500 club, of which there are only 12 members in the history of Celtic Football Club. How high can he get up that list? Can he make the type of appearances as a Danny McGrain, 660 appearances? How many seasons do you think we can continue to get 50 games out of Scott Brown?
He still looks fit enough, and he still takes care of himself. You know, chucking the Scotland team is maybe something that he had to do to make sure he could do that. Scott is, I'm sure there'll be a kind of coaching role made for him at Celtic Park whenever he does decide to hang up his boots, but I think Celtic's a good team, and Scott Brown plays in that team. He's the captain, and you know he's the boss. At times when he's not playing, maybe the team lacks leadership. I hope Scott's captain for many, many more years.
So you're mentioning Scott Brown there. Scott Brown perhaps is being primed for a coaching role at Celtic Park. There was a suggestion quite a few times over the last few years that he would leave, and we actually thought we would lose him in a move to Australia at one point. I think it makes sense, harking back to the times of the Neely Mawkins of this world, who you've already mentioned, where Celtic had a boot-room mentality of ex-players who then joined the coaching staff, and if obviously they had the ability to do so, they would step up as a coach, as a manager. And the boot room is often credited as being a Liverpool thing, but Celtic did it back in the 60s and 70s. There's a bit of a return to that, whereby we recognise John Kennedy, Stephen McManus, Darren O'Day, these players who have come through at Celtic and they're still there and they know the club. How important is that to a club like Celtic, Declan?
I think it's massively important, and it worked when obviously it didn't work out with Tony Mowbray at Celtic, and you could turn to Neil Lennon, who had been there, learned under Gordon Strachan and was primed to come into the role. You know, the first time round he was maybe a bit raw, but second time round he's certainly proved his worth and has mellowed a lot. And
alongside Bruni, you would have Neil Lennon. What do you think that partnership would be like? Obviously, you wouldn't be getting much goals out of they two, would you?
No, but I think you would get two good captains in your team, two guys that would control, dominate midfields, wouldn't be bullied. You know, I think when the two of them played against each other, they were maybe a bit too similar. And when Scott Brown talks about when they first come to Celtic Park, Lennon was one of the first guys to talk to him. So I think certainly Brown kind of took over from Lennon in that position. But I think the two of them have, you know, big players for Celtic, especially in the past 20 years. And Scott Brown will continue to be, and Neil Lennon, part of Celtic's history for a long time.
And who else would you put in the midfield? Would you be adding a bit of creativity and flair in there?
I was going to go with Alan Thompson. But I went with Callum McGregor due to the fact he's a guy I've watched week in, week out for a long time. I like the whole story behind Callum McGregor there at a young age, breaking into the first team. I remember him first coming in under Ronnie, scoring big goals in European qualifiers. And I just think he's a really good player, and I hope we can keep a hold of him for a long time, because he's an exceptional talent, and he's always consistent. He's a real worker in the team. He's always on his game. He's always pressing, and he's just a brilliant player that's always good for a goal.
And another player who, it wouldn't surprise me if he entered the realms of the 500 club. And who would you play alongside those three?
I went with a front three. I've kind of went with the middle three in midfield and went with a front three just so I could squeeze them in. I've went with Shunsuke Nakamura on the right hand side. Nakamura scored my first ever away game at Love Street from a free kick at the very death, 89th minute free kick. And 8-year-olds like that, oh, this is rubbish. 0-0, give me go home, Dad. And Naka, end of the game, stepped up and produced the goods. And and that's a good story with that game. The guy that got the tickets for that game was John Clark. My cousin went to school with John's granddaughter Claire, and she sorted the tickets out for us. So if anybody's to blame with me going to near and far, it's John Clark.
Yeah, another link to the Lisbon Lions here, Declan. Yeah. And who else would you be playing? Because, I mean, Nakamura, free kick specialist, still playing to this day. I think he's about the same age as me, and you still see the footage of him popping up, scoring free kicks for 30 yards. Who would you also play up top? I
went with Odson Edward. It was I thought, should have picked Musa, but I just think Odson's going to become a really, really good player, and he's coming into a game this season. He's been outstanding, and another player I hope Celtic can keep a hold of, whether it's just for a year. If he goes after the possibility of 10 in a row, okay, I think he'll be one of those players everybody will give his blessing to leave, but he's such a big player in the team, and his skill, his creativity, the way he, he's a really good team player, and he's not selfish. He's just a brilliant, brilliant asset to Celtic just now. And I think the goals he scored, especially, recently, in years to come, everybody will look back at it and think, what a talent that boy was. And he's still so young as well. So I went with Odson Edward, and to round it off, I went with the King of Kings. What can be said about this man that hasn't? He was just outstanding. And, I'm glad I was able to say I saw him in the flesh. Not that I can really remember it, but I was there, so I did watch him. And even in some of these Legends games, you go and watch him and you think, he's still got it. He's still got that wee touch, still got that wee flick, still good for a goal. And you watch back footage, in big, big games, Boa Vista, Liverpool's, Porto in the final, UEFA Cup final, then what he went on to do in his career, Manchester United and Barcelona. And he was just such a special talent that gave 7 brilliant years to Celtic. And I think any Celtic supporter holds Henrik Larsson in the highest regard, probably after Jimmy Johnson, is just an exceptional player. And yet another famous number 7. Yep. Not number 7 shorts, but the number 7 jersey. Because back in the day of shorts, Declan, we used to deal with fanzines in the 1980s and the 1990s. And some of the fanzines of choice are sitting in front of you. I know these are before your time. You're only 20 years of age, although you can still pick up things like Not the View, More Than 90 Minutes, Shamrock, Alternative View. But back in the day, these were groundbreaking fanzines from the era of Sack the Board and so forth. I've allowed you to have a look through some of them and pick out some of your highlights. Talk us through some of your highlights of these fanzines. I've picked out a couple of once a Tim fanzines due to the fact, a couple of interviews. There's one with Terry Cassady here, and they're talking about a takeover, and he's very, very dismissive to the idea. And it just seems to be the attitude in those days from the guys on the board. But it's interesting here, you've got guys like Jimmy Farrell, who obviously went on to the new board, so there was guys that still, eventually changed side. But the other guys like Michael Kelly, who I had a run on Twitter with a couple of years ago because he didn't respect the fact that Charlie Gallagher is a Lisbon Lion, and said Charlie wasn't a Lisbon Lion, and said none of the other guys were Lisbon Lions, not knowing that John Fallon was the official substitute and was given a medal, and didn't know that medal was then granted to his uncle, Sir Bob Kelly. And thankfully John got his medal back last year. But it's unbelievable that Celtic was getting run by these guys that quite frankly didn't have a clue, because Michael's telling us stuff on Twitter that's just false. So I've picked them. Many of these ex-board members were obviously born into families who had a controlling stake in the club, and perhaps they took it for granted. I would be interested to hear how many games Michael Kelly's paid into since he was removed from office. But you mentioned Terry Cassady there, just from doing research of the Celtic kit book, and we'll talk about kits in a minute or so. The biggest surprise to many Celtic fans in the 1990s was when we had a sponsor of People's Ford, and it allowed red, white and blue to appear on and desecrate the green and white hoops. So we had Tom Grant on A Celtic State of Mind some time ago, asked him about it. He basically gave the blame to Jack McGinn, who at that time was a commercial manager. What I did in writing my book was I went and spoke to Brian Gilder, who owns People's Ford, and I asked him about the deal, and what he confirmed
was that it was in actual fact Terry Cassady, and Terry didn't care what colours were on the Celtic strip. And it was in terms of a deal, it was a 1-season deal with People's Ford. They couldn't use the Ford logo unless it was blue. People's wanted to use that because that was their big selling point, and so Celtic allowed red, white and blue on the green and white hoops, Declan. Unthinkable now. It's bad enough with a sponsor, but it's bad enough with a black sponsor, which isn't integral to the design of the kit, but red, white and blue, Terry Cassady. What else have you picked out from the fanzines?
Again, it's another one. It's talking about the new stadium at Cambuslang, which never happened, and it's just, to come up with this idea was just crazy. And you just think to yourself, imagine that did happen. I mean, Celtic Park, where it is, the memories for what it is for people, obviously what Fergus did was incredible, but to come up with this plan when they were skint, they were really, really struggling, to come up with plans like this was just, it was just fantasy, and it just wasn't going to happen. They thought people would be stupid enough to buy into the idea, and thankfully they weren't, and the guys at Celts for Change got their way back to Fergus McCann and got the takeover done, which I think everybody is very, very thankful for today, to all those guys that were involved.
Back then, the Celtic View, which I think by Not the View was nicknamed Pravda because it was basically a vehicle for propaganda. They actually showed you, Declan, the plans for the Cambuslang. There was pictures of the stadium, there was artists' impressions.
But my dad tells me a story. They used to get their dinner dance in Celtic Park, and they used to be able to go a wander in the stadium. So they went down to the trophy room, as it was, and there on the big table was the plans of Cambuslang just left lying. So how realistic this plan was, I don't know, but to leave something that you just wouldn't do that, would you? So it just shows you, I mean, it was getting run by
incompetence.
Yes,
So Declan, moving on, a Celtic State of Mind, we set the podcast up to speak about the culture of the club, the culture of the fan base, the city, and as a result of that, we have had a lot of guests on the show who are musicians, are from the world of film, theatre, comedy. We've had plenty of acoustic sessions, so I think anybody that listens to a Celtic State of Mind will know that we have a real love of music, and Celtic and music go hand in hand. I know that you're a big music fan, you go to a lot of live events yourself. Let's have a wee chat about your favourite album. Which album do you go back to time and time again? What would you say is your favourite LP?
As a complete album, it's Abbey Road. Again, before my time, but the Beatles are my favourite band, and it's just something that I can always go to. It's such an iconic image. Everybody knows the cover Abbey Road, and just some of the songs on them are masterpieces. It starts off with Come Together, that Ringo, dun 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 dun. From that into a George Harrison masterpiece and Something, Here Comes the Sun, obviously, and the kind of the end script of Abbey Road is Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight into the end, which Paul McCartney finishes with. And I've been able to see Paul live twice, and it's just incredible when he does Wings and Beatles songs. He's just, he's still his mid-70s. He puts on 3-hour shows, and he's just incredible. And the Beatles, to me, are the greatest band of all time.
You've done a bit of writing for a Celtic State of Mind, Declan. Some of that has been music writing, some of it has been Celtic writing. Talk to us about your journalistic journey and where you hope that will progress.
Everybody at high school kind of wonders, what do you want to do with your life? What you're going to do? What course you're going to do? Are you going to leave? You're going to do an apprenticeship, college? And I would say the social subjects department at Hillhead had a big influence in me and my English teacher, because I enjoyed writing. History was always a thing I really, really enjoyed. Two teachers, Mr. Dunn and Mrs. McGee, were just really, really good people that could really help you, and used to write a lot and chat with them and stuff, and I thought journalism looks like a sort of path that I could do. I like the idea that it's ever changing. News one day isn't the same news the second day, and plenty of stuff to be writing on, especially in our current climate. So I'm currently at Strathclyde studying politics and journalism, which at this point in time is very, very interesting. Since it's been at Strathclyde, obviously there's been a general election, there's still been Brexit negotiations, we've got another American president election coming up, so there's plenty to write about, and it's a good course, and journalism is changing. One of my lecturers at Strathclyde, Dr. Higgins, is exceptional, and the way in which it is changing is fascinating. Everything, media, online media especially, starting to take over from print and press. It still has a place, but everybody sees stuff. It needs to be quick, it needs to be off the cuff. People don't want to wait till the next morning for news. If it breaks at 10 o'clock on the Monday evening, everybody will know by 10:05. It's not a case of wait till Tuesday morning until the newspaper comes out. So it's ever changing, and it's something that I hope I'll have a future career in. But through it you get to meet a lot of good guys and a lot of really, really nice people. And I could say that Scottish journalism, football especially, there's a lot of really, really helpful guys. Hugh McDonald, Hugh Keevans, Richard Gordon, guys like this have been really, really helpful to me, and they're always there for advice, and I've always give you a bit of their time. There's no snobbery from them. I like Gordon's another guy that I've missed out. They're on your level, and they want to help you, and they want you to be as good as you can be. So we'll give you tips. And I'm also very fortunate, a guy like you that's written books that can give me pointers and tips maybe when I'm sending you articles, etc., to say, well, good work on that, etc. So yeah, I think Scottish football journalism gets slated a lot, but there's a lot of really good guys in it that are very, very clever, that certainly know their trade and can bring what would be boring, mundane games to life, Nothing more so than Archie McPherson's commentary at times. But a lot of these guys are just really, really good, helpful people that want young guys like myself and other people to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think as well, Declan, when you look at what people want in relation to the changing landscape in media and everyone having that device in their pocket at all times, and they want updates on a regular basis. You mentioned that they want quick news. How difficult then is it for new media, alternative media, to strike a balance between the quick news culture and mentality and quality, which a Celtic State of Mind set out from the offset to avoid the quick news culture? And we've seen a great rise in it, whereby people are basically sitting at a laptop all day long with a search engine, spitting out Celtic stories, which are then plagiarised and then put out by various news sources. That's something that a Celtic State of Mind will always avoid. But obviously, in order to make something financially viable, the traffic that is sought by all these sources, and there are many in the world of Celtic media, is often attracted by the quick news that we despise. How difficult is it for a Celtic State of Mind and some of the other Celtic outlets to strike that balance of quality over the quick news quantity?
I think quality is imperative, and fanzines, if we go into them first, still have their place. I mean, I know maybe readership wise it isn't very large, but rarely will you find in these fanzines, especially the ones I read, Alternative View, More Than 90 Minutes, Not The View, the quality is very, very good. And some of these guys that are writing in them are really, I mean, David Potter, for instance, David's his knowledge and research in Celtic's exceptional, and his articles are always very, very informative, and it goes for everybody that in those magazines that I mentioned. Yes, they might not they come out once a month, but the articles in them are always first class. And yes, it's good to always be up to date, etc. Everybody's got an opinion now. That's social media such as Twitter, Facebook, but that opinion doesn't always mean that it needs to be in great loads. If it's one comment that's really, really purposeful rather than 10 daft comments, then wait and put out the one, I think it's very, very difficult. I think a Celtic State of Mind, there's a lot of great writers on it, and there's a lot of different ideas and aspects of culture, which is integral to Celtic's, history and what we're linked with, and that should always play a central part. But, yes, it's good to always get stories out, but just at times it's just nonsense, some things that are getting produced, and there's guys that are living in fantasy land are saying this is happening, that's happening, when they don't really know. So if there's any of the guys out there that are producing the mass content, tone it down a bit, get some of the good stuff out and get people reading and becoming knowledgeable in subjects instead of making up nonsense.
Declan, anyone that knows you also knows that you're quite involved in your Celtic Supporters Club. We did an event last year for the Bertie Auld Mary Hill Celtic Supporters Club, which you're involved in. Tell us how you got involved in that club, and tell us a wee bit about the club.
Well, that bus runs from the Starngarter, which is a 5-minute walk from the front of Firhill, which is the reason I'm probably sitting here today. The bus that previously ran from that, the Garscube Emerald, was how my mum and dad met. My dad went in that bus late 80s, early 90s, and he became introduced to my uncles, Gary and Leonard, and through my uncles they introduced my mum to my dad. So if it wasn't for that bus, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. So that bus went defunct, and we then, 2018, kind of got together, myself, my dad. We were on a bus previous to that, but there was a bit of a situation arose there, so we decided to start our own bus. And myself, my dad, my godfather Jerry, and Dougie, who's a guy that comes to the football that was on the bus with us, decided we're going to set up a bus. The pub had just kind of reopened, new ownership, and we thought who better to name it after than the Lisbon line that stays 10-minute walk away from the pub, that is integral to Mary Hill and is something I'm very, very proud of, to come from the same place as Bertie Auld, who grew up in the same street as my nanny, in Panmure Street. She grew up beside Bertie and she used to watch him outside kicking a ball, so it's just a link to Bertie and Mary Hill that I think is integral. But there's another bus that runs from up the road called the Tony Mowbray CSC, who I usually go to away games with, and there's a lot of really, really good guys up there. So Mary Hill is green and white.
You've mentioned your supporters club, Declan. Your supporters club were one of the first to sign up for the inaugural James McLaury Cup, which will be taking place at Cathkin Park in May. Tell us a wee bit about the tournament, and are you actually going to be playing? Are you the gaffer?
Yeah, I'm going to be playing, as long as my knee's alright, but I will be playing, and we're looking forward to it. I think it's good to have a sense of community with supporters buses and get together for these kind of events. And I think things like race nights, dances at the end of the year, putting on music in the pub, etc., is really, really important to the community aspect of supporters clubs.
That event will take place on the 3rd of May. That's the James McLaury Cup. It will be taking place at Cathkin Park. And if you want your team, your Celtic Supporters Club, a group of mates to come along and be involved in that 7-a-side tournament, get in touch with myself via Twitter, and we, at this moment in time, will go ahead with that tournament. If, because of other issues, we're unable to do so, we will reschedule it, but it would be good to get a full card in. So if you're interested, let us know, and we look forward to the first tournament in James McLaury's name. You mentioned earlier on Neely Mockin, you mentioned Adidas kits, Celtic football jerseys. There's a few that you've brought along. If you were to pick a home jersey and a away jersey, what's your favourite of all time, Declan?
I think everybody's home jersey is just those plain green and white hoops. You can put sponsors on it, different badges. I really like just the old retro late 60s, early 70s green and white hoops. I think that is Celtic.
Round neck.
The
husband top.
Yep. I think that is Celtic. And it's that iconic image of Big Billy holding that cup up, that jersey. And I think, there's been a nice couple of different jerseys with a badge on, etc. But to me, that is Celtic, and that's how Celtic should always be, is just green and white hoops.
And what about the away jersey?
There's been a few crackers. As I say, the black jersey, the 125 season, the away top, I thought was just a really, really nice jersey. I would say away jersey wise, just Celtic's away top should either be black or yellow. I thought this season's away kit was quite nice, but that black jersey in that season, I thought was just really, really nice. And we played in it in the cup final when we played Hibs at Hampden, obviously, because it'd been a colour clash. So we played in that black kit. And
what does that jersey remind you? What player?
Joe Ledley. Ledley or Hooper, probably, but Joe Ledley in that kit. As I say, he ran over to the corner, he scored a cracker, a goal, and he had his hands up, and it was kind of, the 10 in a row sign. So that kit, especially, just for that memory. But that was a really good season. And it was a season that was just really, really memorable for what it was, and a good celebration season, 125 years.
What do you think, talking of black kits, what do you think of the blackout kits? Borussia Dortmund currently have one where the badge, the sponsor, everything's black. What do you think of them?
I don't know. I like a Celtic, as much as I said, just green and white hoops, if it's obviously an away kit, the badge is going to be on it nowadays. But I think the badge, that green and white, that clover needs to be apparent in the
full
hoops.
colour.
Aye, the third kit from that season with a big Celtic cross on it, and I liked the way they had Tenants on it as a sponsor, but they'd kind of hidden on to it. I thought was really nice, but I think in away kits it needs to be apparent the badge is there. Maybe works a bit better with a Dortmund badge, but I think a Celtic badge needs to be quite bold on the jersey, so I wouldn't really go for the kind of blackout kit effort.
So we're looking for the green and white hoops, the famous hoops, unbroken for Adidas, and maybe a black away kit.
Yep.
Now, again, one of the discussions Kevin and I have regularly on a Celtic State of Mind is the players that got away. We've mentioned a few over the years, guys that we would have loved to have seen playing for Celtic. Declan, you're from a slightly different era. You're only 20 years of age yourself. What kind of players do you think would have suited Celtic, were perhaps Celtic-minded, that we missed out on?
There's been a couple. Dundee United and Hibs players are probably the two teams I would look towards. At Tannadice, I thought Johnny Russell was an excellent player. and he went down to Derby, and he's still in America, I think, at this point in time. But I just thought he was a good player with flair. I know we obviously took Stuart Armstrong, Gary Mackay-Steven,
and Nadir Chiefty,
but I thought Johnny Russell was a really good player, and he was versatile as well. He could play on the left hand side, or he could play up top. And I think when you're maybe needing a goal scorer that gets the club, Johnny Russell would have maybe been the man, because I think he's still even attends Celtic games, so he would have been a player I would have quite fancied at Celtic Park. And the other one is Andrew Robertson, another great story, coming through the ranks, Queen's Park, up Tannadice, down to Hull, and then obviously European champion at Liverpool, and probably going to be Premier League champion at Liverpool. But I thought, when you watch him, he has an exceptional talent. He works a lot better, I must say, with better players around him. But even in a Scotland jersey, he's a quality player, and he's a quality act. And I think at Celtic he would have been a good player. He's a Celtic supporter, and I think he would have been a really good asset to Celtic. But those are the two from Tannadice. At Easter Road, this caused massive controversy that summer. There was a question of whether Brendan Rodgers was being backed by Peter Lowell due to it. There was various stories being branded about John McGinn was ready, he was going to sign, then the move went through, it was a player's choice. But, looking back on it now, at the time I would have loved to have seen John McGinn at Celtic Park. He's a really good box-to-box midfielder. Villa's seasons kind of collapsed since he, took that injury. But, looking back on it now, we probably wouldn't have had Ryan Christie, who broke through eventually. I mean, I'd been in Leipzig on the Thursday night, he was woeful. And then we went to Murrayfield to play Hearts in the semi-final. Brendan Rodgers made the sub, and I thought, oh no, here he comes. And he scored an absolute belter of a goal. And since that day, I mean, during that treble season, he really came into some game and was probably one of the first names down in the team sheet. So as much as I probably at the time would have liked John McGinn at Celtic Park, I would probably say, now looking back on it, yeah, I'm quite glad that we maybe took the step back and Ryan came into the team a bit more.
You mentioned earlier on Andrew Robertson, and he'll probably be a title winner with Liverpool. That begs the question. The world is in disarray through the coronavirus, Declan, everybody knows. And safety first. Obviously, we're in this wee room together, having a wee chat. Hopefully,
my friend Erin was giving me a hard time when I was coming over here. Said, you're putting other people at risk. Why are you going out? So I think maybe self-isolation for the next couple of days might be needed to kind of...
After sharing the room with me?
Yeah, maybe.
So, obviously, safety first for everybody listening to the podcast. We don't have to preach on that, but we are chatting about football. There's been a lot of chat around about the Scottish media as to what happens with this season's league title. I obviously would grant Celtic the title. You mentioned a season that Edward has had, the performances, the effort, the goals, the investment from fans, the investment from sponsors. How can you just null and void that? In
my opinion, you can't null and void it. It is unthinkable to null and void a season that is so far into. 30 games cannot be disregarded. And as you say, the faithful support that follow this team, including myself and many other people, that are paying £32 at time. Ticket for iBooks, £52.
Sitting in my glove box.
But I mean, I've still got mine. I don't know what's going to happen in that sense, a refund or whatever. But it's just a case of, tickets aren't cheap, and there's a lot of people that put in so much effort to Celtic and following Celtic in Scotland and in Europe. You cannot null and void a season. It is unthinkable to do so, and it would cause a massive uproar. The two clubs yesterday that were moaning about it, one doing so because they've been absolutely rotten this season. I mean, I know Anne Budge is saying we've not completed 38 games, but she's not saying Hearts have played 30 games and won 4. That they've been rotten. So for Hearts to think that, this should be null and voided and she'll take lawyers' action, I don't know how credible that will be, and I don't know how much chance Mrs. Budge has got against the UEFA lawyers. For the other club that's moaning about it, when talking about integrity, and sporting integrity especially, I think is a bit rich. I would play it till the end if it has to become closed doors. Yes, that would obviously have an implication in supporters, etc. However that would work financially would be up to the clubs, but I would rather play it till I finish and make sure, the games are complete, because I think that's really important. But, I mean, this is a football club that are wanting 7 titles from 1939 to 1945 counted. that the league was suspended due to a war, and in season 1939-1940, 5 games had been played. There was very minimal points between the top 7 sides, I think, so to try and, it's hypocritical, and I would go for any club that was wanting to do it, but to try and say that, to what you count those titles from that time, yes, I know the world's in a total pandemic, you could compare it to war years, etc., but the league was suspended. This league wasn't suspended. I mean, just now it is, but that was 5 games, or at 30 games, there's some difference. So to want a couple of years ago to count titles that were won while people were away fighting in battlefields, and then change it to, we fancy this to be null and voided, these have to be, this won't count, it's unbelievable.
Well, Declan, now that you're away for self-isolation, thank you very much for coming in this afternoon for a Celtic State of Mind's daily podcast. Whilst the world is in disarray, we will still talk about Celtic and give you your daily content. Thank you very much. Hopefully we can meet you on the other side.
Cheers.